The UK housing market, long regarded as a cornerstone of financial security and investment potential, is undergoing a period of turbulence that has caught even seasoned investors and homeowners by surprise. For anyone considering purchasing a property in the current climate, the warning signs are both urgent and significant. At UK Property Info, we have analysed the latest trends, statistics, and regulatory changes to provide a clear picture of the challenges and risks that prospective buyers must understand before committing to a purchase. The first and most immediate concern is affordability, which has been reshaped dramatically over the past year due to rising mortgage rates, inflationary pressures, and tighter lending criteria. For over a decade, historically low interest rates allowed buyers to stretch their budgets, often enabling larger mortgages and more flexible borrowing options. That era has now ended. Interest rates have risen sharply, reversing many of the gains that supported affordability, while lenders have become more conservative, requiring higher deposits and stricter income verification. High loan-to-value mortgages, once a common route for first-time buyers, have become scarce, leaving many potential homeowners struggling to secure financing. First-time buyers are particularly affected by these shifts. Traditionally the most active segment of the market, they not only drive transactional volume but also influence the stability and momentum of house prices. With higher interest rates and larger required deposits, many first-time buyers are being priced out of areas they previously considered affordable. Even modest fluctuations in mortgage rates now have an outsized effect on monthly payments, making it imperative for buyers to evaluate their long-term financial capacity before committing. Those who fail to plan carefully risk overextending themselves, potentially encountering financial strain that could compromise other aspects of household stability. The importance of calculating total housing costs including mortgage payments, council taxes, insurance, utility bills, and maintenance is greater than ever, as the cumulative impact of these expenses in a high-cost living environment can be substantial. Another pressing concern lies in the accelerated decline in house prices, which has been more pronounced than many forecasts anticipated. National statistics may suggest modest corrections, but the reality on the ground reveals sharper drops in key regions. London, the South East, and parts of the East of England are witnessing year-on-year reductions exceeding 10% in some locations, particularly in high-value areas of the capital. Regional cities such as Manchester, Birmingham, Leeds, and Edinburgh are also experiencing declines, particularly in neighbourhoods with historically high property values. These variations highlight the necessity of understanding local market conditions rather than relying solely on national averages. Buyers who ignore neighbourhood-specific trends risk making decisions that could lead to negative equity or prolonged difficulty in reselling a property. Knowledge of local demand patterns, historical price trajectories, infrastructure projects, and demographic shifts is now critical for any prospective purchaser aiming to make a sound investment. The rental market exerts an indirect but powerful influence on the sales sector, creating additional warnings for buyers. In recent months, a significant number of landlords have exited the market due to rising mortgage costs, new tax obligations, and stricter regulatory compliance. This withdrawal has reduced the supply of available rental properties, particularly in high-demand urban centres and university towns, where rental stock has traditionally supported first-time buyers and young professionals seeking temporary accommodation. As competition for rentals intensifies, rents rise, limiting the ability of prospective buyers to save for deposits or transition into home ownership. For investors, the reduction in rental availability translates into lower yields and increased risk, which in turn influences market pricing and buyer behavior. This contraction of the rental market has created a ripple effect. Fewer rental options limit first-time buyer activity, increasing the difficulty of transactions and contributing to downward pressure on property values. Construction and new build development trends further reinforce the warning. While historically new builds have helped balance supply and demand, recent shifts have slowed activity considerably. Rising labor costs, surging materials prices, and tighter financing conditions for developers have resulted in delayed or cancelled projects, reducing the inflow of new properties onto the market. This slowdown creates a dual effect. Limited supply can increase competition in desirable areas, driving temporary price spikes, while simultaneously creating uncertainty about future housing availability. Buyers are faced with both scarcity in the short term and uncertainty in the long term, complicating strategic decisions. The timing, quality, and location of forthcoming properties have become less predictable, emphasizing the need for buyers to carefully assess not only current market conditions but also anticipated developments in their target areas. Macroeconomic pressures further amplify these risks. Household budgets are increasingly constrained by rising costs of living, including higher energy bills, transportation expenses, and general inflationary pressures on goods and services. Even households with fixed-rate mortgages may face significantly higher repayments as terms expire, creating additional financial strain. Wage growth has struggled to keep pace with inflation in many sectors, reducing disposable income and exacerbating affordability issues. These factors directly influence buyer confidence, as the ability to commit to a long-term financial obligation becomes more uncertain. Prospective homeowners must evaluate worst-case scenarios, stress-test their finances, and consider potential future interest rate increases to ensure that they are not exposed to unsustainable debt levels. Policy and regulatory changes also play a major role in shaping the current warning. Recent shifts in property taxation, buy-to-let regulations, and incentives for first-time buyers have altered the landscape in ways that can impact affordability, investment returns, and compliance requirements. Landlords face higher taxes and stricter compliance demands, while first-time buyers must navigate a fragmented and evolving set of schemes and policies. Failure to account for these changes may result in unexpected costs or regulatory challenges, making professional guidance and careful research essential. These regulatory pressures, when combined with rising borrowing costs and falling property values, create an environment in which even well-intentioned buyers may find themselves exposed to risk if decisions are made without a thorough understanding of the evolving market dynamics. Demographic and market psychology factors further reinforce the urgency of this warning. Younger buyers, often burdened with student debt and high living costs, are delaying entry into the housing market, while older homeowners are reluctant to downsize or move, reducing the flow of properties that traditionally supports first-time buyer activity. Media coverage emphasizing falling property values, mortgage challenges, and rental shortages contributes to a feedback loop where buyers delay purchases in anticipation of further declines and sellers adjust asking prices downward preemptively. This psychological dynamic amplifies market volatility and accelerates the pace at which property values can fall. Awareness of these behavioral and sentiment-driven influences is crucial for buyers seeking to make informed and strategic decisions. In conclusion, the first segment of our warning to prospective buyers emphasizes the critical importance of understanding affordability, regional price disparities, rental market pressures, new build developments, macroeconomic constraints, policy changes, and market psychology. Each of these factors interacts with the others to create a complex and volatile environment in which careful research, realistic financial planning, and professional advice are essential. Entering the market without a comprehensive understanding of these dynamics could result in overpaying, financial stress, or reduced long-term returns. At UK Property Info, our goal is to equip viewers with data-driven insights and expert analysis to navigate these challenges with confidence, ensuring that any property purchase is both sustainable and strategically sound. Awareness, preparation, and diligence are no longer optional. They are the foundation of success in today's UK property market. The second segment of this warning focuses on the deeper structural and market dynamics that continue to reshape the UK property landscape, impacting both buyers and investors. One of the most significant factors influencing current market behavior is the ongoing contraction of the rental sector. Over recent months, landlords across the UK have increasingly been exiting the market, driven by a combination of rising mortgage rates, increased taxation, and more stringent regulatory requirements. The introduction of new taxes on rental income, coupled with limitations on mortgage interest relief, has made buy-to-let investments less profitable and, in some cases, financially unsustainable. Small and medium-scale landlords, who historically formed the backbone of the private rental sector, are now selling off properties, creating a ripple effect throughout the housing market. The immediate consequence is a reduction in rental supply, particularly in urban areas and university towns where demand has traditionally been high. As rental options dwindle, tenants face higher competition and rising rents, limiting their ability to save for deposits and delaying transitions into home ownership. This contraction also indirectly influences the sales market. Fewer renters becoming buyers slows transaction volumes and increases downward pressure on prices in regions where rental properties once facilitated market liquidity. Investor sentiment plays an equally critical role in shaping the trajectory of property values. Institutional investors, once a stabilizing force in the market, are exhibiting heightened caution in response to volatility, affordability challenges, and uncertainty around economic growth. Large-scale portfolios that previously absorbed available housing supply are now being managed more conservatively, with acquisitions paused or reduced in volume. Individual investors, many of whom entered the market during the post-pandemic property boom, are reassessing their positions in light of declining yields, rising mortgage repayments, and potential long-term corrections. The combination of institutional hesitancy and individual caution has reduced market liquidity, creating an environment in which properties may remain on the market longer and transaction volumes decline. In turn, these dynamics exacerbate the speed of price adjustments, with sellers often preemptively reducing asking prices to attract buyers in a constrained and uncertain market. Construction and new build activity, which traditionally serves as a balancing force between supply and demand, has also slowed significantly. Rising labor costs, volatile materials prices, and increased financing costs for developers have led to delays or cancellations of planned projects. This slowdown in construction has multifaceted consequences for the property market. First, it limits the availability of new homes, which in certain areas could lead to temporary competition that inflates prices. Second, it introduces long-term uncertainty regarding supply levels, making it more challenging for buyers to plan for future investments or anticipate resale potential. Prospective homeowners must now factor in not only current availability but also projected developments and construction timelines, as the market's ability to self-correct is slower when new housing stock is restricted. Macro-level economic pressures compound these risks. Household budgets are under increasing strain as energy prices, transportation costs, and general inflation continue to rise. Even those with previously manageable mortgages are facing term expirations with higher repayments, further constraining disposable income. Wage growth, in many sectors, has not kept pace with inflation, reducing affordability and placing additional pressure on prospective buyers. These economic conditions directly influence buyer confidence, limiting the pool of active participants in the market. For investors, these constraints affect rental demand and yields, further reducing incentives to purchase or maintain properties. The interplay between affordability constraints, economic pressures, and reduced investor participation contributes to a market environment characterized by heightened volatility and faster than anticipated price corrections. Policy and regulatory changes remain a key factor influencing market dynamics. Adjustments to stamp duty, changes to buy-to-let taxation, and tighter regulatory compliance for landlords have altered the incentives for both investors and homeowners. While some policies aim to support first-time buyers or stimulate certain regions, the fragmented and evolving nature of these regulations can create uncertainty. Buyers who fail to understand these nuances may encounter unexpected costs, compliance challenges, or reduced investment returns. Furthermore, these changes influence market behavior as both buyers and sellers adapt to shifting policy landscapes, often accelerating price adjustments or altering transaction timelines. Demographics continue to shape demand patterns and market behavior. Younger buyers, burdened by student debt and higher living costs, are delaying their entry into the property market, reducing the volume of first-time buyer transactions. Older homeowners, meanwhile, are hesitant to downsize or relocate due to economic uncertainty, limiting the flow of existing homes that would otherwise support market activity. This demographic imbalance contributes to both regional disparities and longer transaction cycles, further amplifying downward price pressures. Understanding the interplay between generational trends and housing demand is essential for buyers seeking to make strategic and sustainable investments. Psychological factors and market perception also play a significant role in accelerating property price adjustments. Widespread media coverage emphasizing falling property values, rising mortgage costs, and rental shortages influences buyer and seller behavior. Prospective buyers may delay purchases, expecting further price declines, while sellers reduce asking prices preemptively to attract interest. This feedback loop between perception and action can magnify price movements beyond what traditional economic indicators might suggest. Market sentiment, therefore, must be considered alongside hard data when evaluating the risks and opportunities of property purchase. Regional disparities further highlight the importance of careful research and localized decision-making. While some national averages may indicate moderate price adjustments, high-demand urban centers often experience sharper declines. Conversely, suburban and commuter belt areas may exhibit more stability due to affordability advantages and continued demand. Regional cities like Manchester, Birmingham, Leeds, and Edinburgh display mixed patterns, with higher-end neighborhoods adjusting faster than more affordable areas. Buyers must analyze neighborhood-specific trends, planned infrastructure projects, school performance, and transport links to fully understand potential risks and long-term value trajectories. In conclusion, Segment 2 emphasizes the broader market and structural factors that contribute to the current property warning. The contraction of the rental sector, cautious investor behavior, slowed construction, macroeconomic pressures, regulatory changes, demographic trends, market sentiment, and regional disparities collectively create a volatile environment for prospective buyers. Entering the market without understanding these interconnected dynamics significantly increases the risk of financial strain, reduced investment returns, or longer-term market challenges. At UK Property Info, our mission is to provide in-depth, data-driven analysis, equipping viewers with the insights needed to navigate these conditions strategically. Awareness of rental market pressures, investor trends, construction slowdowns, economic realities, and regional disparities allows buyers to make informed, calculated decisions, ensuring that any property investment remains sustainable and strategically sound amid an increasingly complex UK property landscape. Segment 3 of our analysis shifts focus to the long-term structural challenges, policy implications, and behavioral factors that are shaping the UK property market today and creating ongoing risks for buyers. While affordability, mortgage conditions, rental market contraction, and regional disparities drive immediate price fluctuations, it is these deeper, structural issues that create the conditions for sustained market volatility and unpredictability. For prospective buyers, understanding these forces is critical, as they influence not just short-term pricing but also long-term value and investment security. One of the most significant structural challenges is the chronic underbuilding that has plagued the UK housing market for decades. Despite repeated government promises to increase housing supply, new construction has consistently lagged behind population growth, household formation, and urban expansion needs. This mismatch between supply and demand has historically created upward pressure on prices, particularly in high-demand areas. However, in the current environment of rising interest rates and constrained affordability, limited supply is insufficient to maintain price stability. In fact, the structural shortage can exacerbate volatility, as small shifts in buyer behavior or financing availability lead to disproportionately large swings in local property values. Prospective buyers must therefore consider both immediate supply constraints and longer-term demographic trends when assessing the potential for price growth or stability in their target areas. Policy and regulation continue to play a pivotal role in shaping market behavior. Over the past few years, frequent changes in taxation, buy-to-let regulations, and incentives for first-time buyers have created significant uncertainty. Landlords face increasing costs, stricter compliance requirements, and reduced tax relief, which has prompted many to exit the market entirely. Meanwhile, first-time buyers must navigate a patchwork of grants, stamp duty adjustments, and eligibility criteria, often with little clarity on long-term implications. These shifting policies influence both supply and demand. Fewer landlords reduce rental stock, limiting the options for tenants seeking to transition to home ownership, while policy uncertainty can make buyers hesitant to commit to new purchases. Prospective homeowners and investors alike must therefore carefully analyze both the current regulatory environment and potential future policy changes to avoid unexpected financial consequences. Demographics are another critical factor shaping market trends. The UK is experiencing significant generational shifts that influence housing demand. Younger buyers, burdened with student debt and rising living costs, are delaying home ownership, which reduces the pool of active buyers and slows market turnover. At the same time, older homeowners are increasingly reluctant to downsize or relocate due to financial uncertainty, reducing the availability of larger properties for first-time buyers. These demographic constraints, combined with affordability pressures and rising living costs, have created an environment in which supply and demand are increasingly misaligned. Buyers who fail to account for these trends risk purchasing in areas with slow turnover or limited resale potential, potentially locking themselves into properties that are difficult to sell or underperform in value. Market psychology and sentiment also play an outsized role in the current property climate. Media coverage highlighting falling house prices, rental shortages, and rising mortgage costs shapes buyer and seller behavior, often creating feedback loops that accelerate price adjustments. Buyers may delay purchases in anticipation of further declines, while sellers reduce asking prices preemptively to attract attention, resulting in more rapid corrections than traditional economic models might predict. This psychological component is particularly important in high-demand urban centers, where price swings are amplified by perception and expectation. Prospective buyers must not only analyze hard data but also consider sentiment-driven market behavior when planning purchases, ensuring that decisions are informed and not reactionary. Regional disparities further emphasize the need for localized knowledge and research. National averages can obscure the reality of micro-market conditions, where prices, demand, and liquidity vary dramatically by city, neighborhood, and even street. London continues to face significant corrections, particularly in prime central areas where international investment has declined. Suburban and commuter belt regions, while impacted, show more resilience due to relative affordability and consistent local demand. Regional cities such as Manchester, Birmingham, Leeds, and Edinburgh display uneven trends, with higher value neighborhoods correcting faster than more affordable districts. Buyers must carefully examine local employment trends, infrastructure projects, transport links, and school quality, as these factors directly affect both short-term market behavior and long-term property value. Construction and development trends also influence the long-term outlook. Although new builds can stabilize supply and moderate price swings, current challenges in labor availability, material costs, and financing for developers have slowed activity. Delays and cancellations of projects reduce the introduction of new properties to the market, which in turn limits buyer options and reinforces volatility in pricing. For prospective homeowners and investors, understanding the trajectory of development is critical. Areas experiencing delayed or paused projects may see slower appreciation or limited liquidity, while regions with consistent new builds may offer greater stability and long-term potential. Economic and financial pressures remain central to the warning. Rising living costs, high energy bills, and inflationary pressures continue to strain household budgets, limiting the amount of income available for mortgages, maintenance, and other housing-related expenses. Even those with previously manageable fixed-rate mortgages face the risk of higher repayments upon term expiration. Wage growth lagging behind inflation further reduces affordability and purchasing power, making it essential for buyers to stress-test their finances against realistic worst-case scenarios. Investors must also account for potential fluctuations in rental demand and yields, as economic constraints affect tenants' ability to pay higher rents and influence occupancy rates. Finally, the combination of all these factors, structural shortages, policy uncertainty, demographic shifts, construction delays, macroeconomic pressures, regional disparities, and market psychology creates an environment of heightened risk and volatility. Prospective buyers must approach the market with caution, conducting thorough research, seeking professional advice, and carefully evaluating both immediate affordability and long-term potential. Entering the UK property market without full awareness of these interconnected dynamics could result in overpayment, negative equity, financial strain, or reduced returns on investment. At UK Property Info, we emphasize the importance of strategic planning, data-driven decision-making, and comprehensive market understanding to navigate this complex landscape. Awareness, preparation, and prudence are no longer optional. They are essential for anyone seeking to secure a home or make a property investment that is sustainable and resilient in the face of ongoing market challenges. Understanding these long-term structural and behavioral dynamics is critical for buyers who want to avoid costly mistakes. By combining financial diligence, local market knowledge, and awareness of broader economic and policy trends, prospective homeowners can make informed decisions that balance risk, opportunity, and long-term security. The UK property market remains full of potential, but only for those who approach it with insight, strategy, and caution. This comprehensive understanding is what separates successful, resilient buyers from those who find themselves exposed to unexpected financial pressure or declining property values. For every potential buyer, the takeaway is clear: before you buy, educate yourself, plan carefully, and never underestimate the complexity and volatility of the UK property market.